Are you giving from an empty cup? In this episode, I'm going to share my own story and why love my body, love myself is so important. And it's important for us to build that self love so that we're not performing and giving out of an empty cup. So stay tuned. Welcome to Love My Body, Love Myself. This is a special limited series for Unleash Your Audacious Confidence. And the reason I'm doing this series, it's because as women, we tend to give and give and give and give. And sometimes, just sometimes, we find ourselves depleted. And so this series is really about how do we find the strength to love ourselves and to love our bodies when either our bodies, we feel like it's betrayed us, or we've given so much that we have ignored our spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical health, that things start to break down. And there are some physical things that happen to us as women during the course of our lives that we don't really quite understand and we don't know about. And science hasn't really helped us. The doctors haven't really helped us to unpack all of that because they haven't done the research into it. So I have some special guests that I've invited into this series that's going to help us with our hormones, our health and wellness, to understand the emotional part of us when we grieve something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be loss of a loved one. We grieve a lot of things in our lives and help us through that grieving process. I wanted to help young mothers who are lactating, who are having difficulty or challenges in that, because I know that can be an issue as well. So we have experts that are coming in. And then last week, we shared a story of a woman that just gave everything and almost gave her life. She's a wife, she's a mother. She gave into her family, she gave into her community, and there was nothing left for her. And it almost cost her everything. And that's what I want to share with my story. I'm going to tell you some things that I've never shared before in this series because I think it's important for us to understand where we are and the support that's out there for us. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge for me because, like I said, I'm sharing some things. I've shared a lot, and I'm sharing some things that I have never talked about before, but I felt it important to be open for some things that some other women I know are going through and may not know how to navigate this. I just shared how, as women, we give and we give and we give. And for women of a certain generation, I'm a Gen Xer, and in my generation, as latchkey kids, as kids that were expected to take care of ourselves because both parents were working. For most households, both parents were working, and we had to grow up pretty quickly. And we have a lot of traumas from that. And for me personally, I've told some of my story growing up about just believing that I was stupid, believing that I was worthless because I was told those things as a child from people who loved me, who I looked up to, who nurtured me. And I thought that they had to be right because they're adults and they know, so they had to be right about me. But the thing was, gave me this idea of lowliness, of unworthiness, that I can never be enough. And I had that in the core of my being. So every move I made, everything that I did was as a result of that. It was triggered from that belief of unworthiness. I don't know how many women are experiencing that or have experienced that, but I'm guessing quite a few of us have experienced that and still experience that, this feeling that you're not enough and you're not good enough and you have to keep working harder and you have to please everyone around you to get some sort of validation. That is a real thing. And for me, it made me be a people pleaser. And I performed. I got very good at performing for everyone and being able to say the right things, do the right things, be the right person for the moment. I got very good at it. So people didn't know what was happening on the inside of me. People didn't know how I felt, that I was crumbling. Nobody knew I was crumbling. My family didn't know I was crumbling because I knew how to put on such a brave face and to smile through adversity, keep things going, just make sure everything's okay and everyone's taken care of. That was the mission. It didn't matter about me. As long as everything looked great, everyone from the outside saw everything wonderful and perfect, then I was doing my job. When in reality, there were some cracks. Cracks began to show, cracks that I didn't know how to deal with. And I sought out help. I sought out help from different places, from elders, from my church, from people I trusted. And I did get some support. Was it always the right support? Hmm. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So our guest last week talked about having a stroke, heart attack, quadruple bypass. That was her wake-up call. Mine came a little bit before my breast cancer. It came about 4 years before I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. And if anyone knows anything about cancer cells, and I learned this after I was diagnosed, is that they start duplicating, and a tumor or a lump does not actually physically show up for about 3 to 4 years before you can actually see a physical structure. And so about 4 years before my diagnosis was when things started to emotionally fall apart for me. Those details I'm not going to go all the way into. I'm just going to say that my entire identity was challenged. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what my purpose was anymore. I didn't know why I existed anymore. And I got to the point that I felt like I don't need to continue to be here. It was that bad for me. And I know for a lot of people, that pain becomes really excruciating of your whole life feeling, I don't know what all this was worth. I got to that breaking point, and it wasn't because I wasn't a good enough Christian. It wasn't because I wasn't a good enough mother or a good enough wife or a good enough friend. It was because I was all those things to everyone, but nothing to myself. I never took the time, really took the time to learn how to love myself. The things that I was ashamed about, I was embarrassed about, I was ashamed of who I was, and I didn't even realize that. I was people pleasing and operating from this place of unworthiness because I had so much shame about just being me. I don't know if you know what that's like, but I'm sure there's one or two of you that do. And the shame of just being me became unbearable. I had to go deep within through a lot of prayer And like I said, it wasn't that I didn't think I was a good Christian. I had lost my faith in myself. I didn't know where to turn. And the places that I would turn couldn't help me. They didn't know how. I had to go really deep to find myself and to begin to climb out of the mess that I had internalized and start putting myself first. That's really hard for some women. It was hard for me to put myself first, to start doing things that filled my cup. Because 4 years before my diagnosis, my cup, not only was it empty, it was cracked because it was so dry. I had to stop performing. I had to stop performing for everyone and everything around me. That was one of my first steps. I had to stop being everything to everyone. I had to learn to say no. That was so hard for me to say no because I was always the one that people could count on. You need something done? Yeah, Alicia will do it. Oh, you need this? You need a volunteer? You need something? I was volunteering and running myself crazy doing everything. And I had to stop. What value did I have in this world? I didn't know. Aside from being the volunteer and doing everything for everybody and making sure that everybody saw me as a good mom and a good wife. Aside from those things that I did, who was I? And what value did I have? Part of doing my shows, Unleash Your Audacious Confidence, was a search for finding my own value. Being able to help someone else was a search to find myself. And through sharing these shows and sharing my experiences and being able to share that I had low confidence and low self-esteem, that even though people would look at me from the outside, I knew how to perform. They wouldn't see the insecurity that I carried with me. They weren't seeing those things. In order to truly love someone, you have to love yourself. And while I would say, I love my children and I would do anything for them, and that was a reality, that was a truth, I didn't really love my children until I learned to love me because they're a part of me. And if I didn't love me, how can I fully love and give everything to them? I gave everything that I could to them, but again, from a cup that was continuing to drain and become empty. And there are times that my daughter says that, Mom, you weren't there for me, or I wish you were there for me during this particular time. And when I think back to that time, those were times that the cracks started to show, and I didn't know how to handle those cracks. And so I was disappearing and I wasn't being there for them in the way that I should have been. Now, I don't carry guilt for that because I was drowning and I didn't even know I was drowning, and they didn't know I was drowning. They had no idea. Had the smile, did the things, but I was drowning. I'm doing this show and I'm sharing this with you because some of you might be drowning and you might be wondering, what is this thing called self-love? How do I love my body? Having a diagnosis of breast cancer helped me look at my body differently. I did my whole TEDx talk on my breasts and my challenge throughout my life with my breasts and why I did not like them. But before my diagnosis was when that journey to loving them began and accepting them. That was in 2019. And I actually had someone say something to me that was quite inappropriate, I would say. I don't know. Maybe it was a little rude, but I had taken a picture from the pageant that I went to, and there are pictures of the pageant behind me. I had entered a pageant in 2019. I had turned 50, and I entered this pageant not because I had turned 50, but because I never believed that I was really pretty and beautiful, and that a pageant was never something that I would ever win. And I chose to do that pageant after resisting it for many, many years, that it was in front of me and I was offered to do it. And I chose to do it as a way to step into a level of confidence that I had been resisting. Judgment. I did not want to be judged by actual judges and by my peers and my friends and family. I did not want to be judged. But that was a level of confidence that I had to break free of. And I stepped into that so that I can stand in front of people, have them judge me, and know that even if they did not judge me as a winner, that within myself I had won because I broke that threshold, that barrier of fear of judgment. So that's why I did the pageant in that time in 2019. And that was about the time that I started really leaning into this self love and self acceptance and finding love for my body and who I was. And I wore a dress that I probably would have felt ashamed to wear because it had a deep cleavage and I would have felt too embarrassed to share and show any kind of cleavage. But I wore this dress and I felt good in the dress. And I took a selfie. And you know, when you take a selfie, the phone is up here. So I took a selfie and I posted it. And I got a call from someone who was at the time considered a friend, and it was a male. And he told me to take that down, take that photo down because it was inappropriate and I was showing cleavage and I shouldn't be. I should be ashamed of myself for doing that. I'm a wife, I'm a mother. And he kind of laid into me on that. And out of nowhere, I honestly, I don't know where this came from other than my spirit inside of me said to him, "You have no idea what God is doing, working inside of me right now. You don't know what work he's doing in me. For you to judge, again, it was that fear of judgment. I did not want to put myself out there. I was afraid. But in that moment, I said, you can't judge me because you have no idea what work God is doing within me to accept my body and who I am." And that broke something open for me in that moment. In that moment, I advocated for myself, which I had really rarely ever done. I stood up to someone that I did respect, but I said something to them that was a journey to loving myself. Instead of feeling the shame and embarrassment, which I normally would have felt in that moment of him saying that to me, I stood up for myself and I said, "No, you don't get to judge me. You don't get to say that to me." And that was the beginning of my journey to loving my breasts and loving myself. And then I got the diagnosis and faced a doctor that said mastectomy and stood up to that doctor and said, "No, no, I'm not going to do that." So self love, self advocacy, self acceptance, it's all wrapped up in our audacious confidence. And it's all part of loving ourselves. Being able to put yourself first, being able to say, "I love me and I'm going to do what is right for my body, for my health, for my well being, for my mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health, does not take away from anybody else in your life. It does not take away from your family. It does not take away from the attention that you want to give or the love that you want to give to someone else. In fact, it magnifies it. But until you are ready to step into that place of self love, that radical self love, that place of self love that says, I'm going to put myself first in this moment, in this season, because if I don't, I am going to crack and break. That becomes an imperative. You need to do that for yourself. And if there's toxicity around you, toxic people, people who don't understand, you need to step away from that situation so that you can find love for yourself. If there are people who are saying degrading things to you or making you believe that you are less than and that you don't have worth and value, you need to step away from those situations. You need to go deep and discover the power that's within you by loving yourself. I wrote out these 7 steps to audacious confidence. And the first step is to know yourself and love yourself. And knowing yourself includes knowing the things about you that you're ashamed of, the things about you that you are embarrassed about or you don't want to talk about, those dark things, those thoughts, those things that make you feel inferior. It's about opening up the window shades on those things for yourself. I'm not saying share it with the world or share it with anybody else, but opening them up to yourself and then understanding what those things are. I was not stupid. I was not dumb. I was not a bad person or worthless or unworthy. I was none of those things that I was led to believe or feel about myself. So if you're experiencing any of those things, it's time to break free. And I would love to connect with you. Go to alicia360.com. I'd love to connect with you. And, let's share. I have a Facebook community for Love My Body, Love Myself. I'd love for you to join that Facebook community and let's talk about self-love and what it really means. I'm going to be sharing the episodes of this series. It's 7, sorry, powerful episodes. And then we have a special that I did when I was on a cruise that I'm going to share some thoughts from some amazing women. So stick with us through this series. Connect with me. Join the Facebook group. I linked it in the notes here. And let's continue this conversation because I believe that we can eradicate imposter syndrome and inferiority complexes and lack of confidence and all these things that we feel and we go through by just stepping into our own love of ourselves and love of our bodies and not being ashamed of our bodies. So, what are some tips that I can share with you to help you in your self love journey? I talked about my 7 steps to audacious confidence to know yourself and love yourself. But really, I want you to go download our action guide for reflect, reframe, and rebuild. I'm going to link it in the notes here because in that reflection, I want you to really reflect on your what makes you feel less than or not worthy or ashamed of. Why are you performing? When did that start in your life? When did the performance start that you thought, oh, when I do this, I get rewarded. So I'm just going to keep doing this. So I keep getting rewarded. But when I do this other thing, they don't like me. So I'm going to avoid doing this other thing and I'm going to perform here. And somewhere in the middle, you lost yourself. I want you to reflect on those things. And then in the reflection, then you have a chance to go back and reframe what that really meant. When I performed over here and I got congratulations and I got what felt like love and acceptance, but it wasn't really me. So I learned to perform and then reframe that situation of how could I have shown up for myself in those moments and been authentic to myself and really been true to who I am and still felt good about that. Because in the reframe, we have a lot of opportunity to look at things from different perspectives, and then we get to choose what it means. That's the beautiful thing about a reframe is we get to choose what that experience really means to us now as adults, as full-grown women, and not as a 5-year-old or 3-year-old or 8-year-old. We get to reframe what that means. So you're going to reflect, then you're going to do the reframe, and then it's time to rebuild. And this is the powerful step of rebuilding the persona that really deeply reflects who you are. And you're able to step into your own authenticity. People use that word all the time, authenticity. But what does that mean to you? And how can you step into that more powerfully? Again, if there's anything you want help with, please feel free to connect with me and also join our Facebook group where we're going to continue the conversation. I look forward to hearing from you and hoping that this is really powerful. Go to redcarpetceo.com/resource to download that action guide for Reflect, Reframe, Rebuild. I hope you enjoy the series. I hope the experts that I've brought on to talk about these important issues help you and help you align with yourself and help you love yourself and love your body, love the skin that you're in. Reach out. Let's continue the conversation. I love you. I thank you. I thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable, to be honest, to share some things about myself that I went through, because we go through these seasons in our lives of pain. And sometimes it's because of a loss, but we don't know how to always handle it. And we don't always have the right support around us to help us overcome. So connect with me. I'd love to hear more. And I hope you enjoy the series. Stay tuned for more Love My Body, Love Myself right here on Unleash Your Audacious Confidence. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and our YouTube channel, because this is where the series is going to be unleashed. It's going to be launched every Monday. We're going to launch a new episode, and then stick with us through the rest of Unleash Your Audacious Confidence, because we're going to be diving deeper into what it means to be a woman, a working woman, a woman in business, and how can we continue to grow our confidence with our teams, with as leaders in leadership. And so I want to be able to dive a little bit more into that so that we can build strong women leaders. All right, that's it for me on this episode of Love My Body, Love Myself. I will see you next time. Mwah. Turnover. It's incredibly expensive for any organization, but especially those that are small and mid-size. If you're an organization and you're hiring, it's so important to get it right. You need to identify the right people for the right roles. Here at Audacious Concepts, Inc., we help you perfect your hiring process so you get it right every single time. Reach out to us at audaciousconceptsinc.com.